Are you bourbon balling on a budget, or are you just looking for the best bang for your buck? Stay tuned after the break for what I think are the best values in bourbon. Okay, everybody's got their idea of what bottles are. Ones that punch above their weight class are ones that taste just as good as more expensive bottles. I know that there's a ton of examples here. I know my tastes aren't the same as everyone else's, and that's fine. That is the beauty of the whiskey community, and as I always say, if we all like the same things, then whiskey would be really boring and there'd really only ever be one brand. So my wish list for the best value in bourbon, right, is something that is relatively inexpensive. So I'm not talking about limited editions. I'm not talking about whiskey that you can never find on a shelf ever. I'm trying to talk about like pretty widely available bottles that are decently priced and I think punch above their weight class or can compete with bottles that are much more expensive than them. So there's a couple of examples right off the top that I'm going to eliminate, and that's going to probably anger some people. First one I'm knocking off is Evan Williams Bottled and Bond. It is a $20 bottle that drinks like a $40 bottle. Absolutely, I don't disagree with that. However, I think that is more of an indictment on the $40 bottles than it is praise for Evan Williams Bottled and Bond being $20, because I think there's a lot in that $30 to $40 range that doesn't quite know what it's supposed to be and therefore is not really that good. So that's usually the low end of craft whiskey, is in that $40 range. Not saying there's not good craft whiskey out there. There absolutely is. There's Redwood Empire's Lost Monarch. There's some Castle and Key stuff. The Restoration Rye that I have is really good. That was $40-ish. So that is great. The thing about Evan Williams for me, I've had multiple bottles. If I'm at a bar and want an old fashioned on the cheap, it is a good bottle, but it's got this grassy note at the end of it that just turns me off every time. To me, it's one of those that's very obviously young. Like it's a 4-year-old. Obviously, it has to be 4-year-old to be bonded. I understand that. But it doesn't taste like there's anything in that blend that's over 4 years old. I don't know if it's just the Heaven Hill mash bill doesn't taste that great that young or what, but it does honestly taste young for me. So that's one that I know a lot of people love. I'm just not in love with it. And then another one is Old Grandad 114 or Old Grandad Bonded, either one. It's pretty much the same story for me. And look, if you're talking $35 and 114 proof, that is really hard to beat. And if you like the flavor profile, it's great. It's just not for me. It is baking spices and young corn, and that's every time I end up trying it, that's what I get off of it. So those are the two that I think are crowd favorites that I am not going to say. But if you like the Heaven Hill or Beam profiles, those might be things that you like. So check those out if those are for you. On to my actual list, and I kind of put aside some of my rules. I know there's a good amount of crossover for this one. Last year's 7 bottles under 40, and we kind of got criticized for that being a Brown-Forman heavy one, because I think like 5 out of the 7 were Brown-Forman. So we're going to start out with one that used to be Brown-Forman, and is now owned by Sazerac. It's Early Times Bottled and Bond. Early Times Bottled and Bond kind of set the internet ablaze in like 2019. The bourbon junkies were huge into it, and then Brown-Forman sold it to Sazerac in a very surprising move, and Sazerac has been doing kind of its own thing with it. We actually did a blind between the Brown-Forman and the Sazerac version, and my friend Brad picked the Brown-Forman version. I picked the Sazerac version, but I really honestly don't think there's that much difference between it. However, supposedly here in 2024, there will be a huge difference because it's going to be started sourcing through Sazerac, through Barton 1792, and it will no longer be the Early Times distilled. I'm a little bit wary about the future, but I still think that makes it a top tier value bourbon, $30 for a liter, and I think it tastes just as good as higher end stuff in that. I mean, I think it's as good as E.H. Taylor's small batch. I think it's as good as Henry McKenna, especially some bottles of Henry McKenna Bottle and Bond are not that great. And for half the price, I could have 2 of these for 1 Henry McKenna. Yeah, I'm taking that every day. Early Times Bottle and Bond has been near and dear to my heart, and I think that it is one of the bottles that has the best value. I mean, I think it drinks like a $45, $50 bottle Availability can be an issue at times. We had it in Pennsylvania here. We had exactly 2 drops and then never saw it again. But it seems to be pretty readily available in like Jersey, New York, and elsewhere. So they are still distributing it around. It's not becoming just your token Buffalo Trace product where you'll see it in whispers and then it's absolutely gone. But it is a really, really solid, really good, complex sipper that I absolutely love. Going on the coattails of that, it's Brown-Forman's stepsister. Cooper's Craft 100, I think, is a fantastic bottle. It is not bonded, but it is at least 4 years old, so the age difference between the two should be roughly the same. It is a different mash bill in early times. It is Brown-Forman's standard 72% corn, 18% rye, 10% malted barley, so it is a little bit spicier. It does have a little bit broader of a caramel, a sweets profile, where I think the early times has a lot of cherry, a lot of fruit notes. It drinks, I think, more like a $50 to $60 bottle. I think there's a lot in that 50 to 60 range that could be upended by Cooper's. I actually think Cooper's is probably better, in my opinion, and I would definitely imagine that it depends on the batch and who blended it. When we're talking about batch products, each batch is a little different because they don't have all the same barrels going into every single one. So Cooper's Craft is fantastic. It's actually more available than the early times bottled and bond, and I think it is one that definitely competes with bottles in that $50 to $60 range. So I think it's a great value, and it's very worthy of number 2 on this list. Number 3 on this list is one that I think gets overlooked, and that is 1792 Full Proof. So 1792 Full Proof is a Barton 1792 product, obviously, bottled at 125 proof. I think there's store picks out there that can compete with Stag. Like, they are definitely good. Some of them can be a little baking spices-y. The regular blended product I don't think is as good as the store picks, but we're talking it is a $45 bourbon here. Like, there's not a whole lot that I love in the $45 to $50 range. It is a little bit harder to find, but you can usually get at least yearly. They do a giant drop of store picks. Pretty easy to find around here. I know Pennsylvania gets like 2 or 3 store picks a year. I honestly think some of these are better than Booker's. And now I think Booker's is a little overvalued. If we say that Booker's is worth ideally 90, I think some batches of Full Proof being better than that, you can put that in that range. No, I'm playing with a lot of variables here. Play fast and loose with value. It's who I am as a person. I'm not saying that this is necessarily worth $90. And Sazerac, if you're watching, please ignore anything that I've said. It is a great value at $45 to $50. I would even maybe pay $60 for a store pick that I really enjoy, and I will enjoy it as much as bottles in that $80 to $100 range. Might be a little bit of the point of diminishing return there, but I really do think it has its big boy pants on and punches well above its price. So I think it's one of the best values in bourbon. Going on to number 4, and if you've watched this channel for any amount of time, this is one that I honestly won't shut up about, and I think it's gaining a lot more traction, but I'm still seeing bottles staying in the $50-ish price range, and I think that it's an absolute steal, and that is Blue Note Juke Joint's Uncut Unfiltered. So back in 2020, I had actually started on Reddit's Our Bourbon store picks list, and I saw one, and it was $50, and I was like, it's 120 proof. I'm willing to take a gamble. Let's see how it is. And it instantly became one of my favorite bourbons. It is absolutely phenomenal. It is a lot of those things that I like about Stag in the fruitiness, the brown sugar, the vanilla, the oak. It has, I think, a lot of all of those things, and I think they're great, and you can still have them. I mean, Sealbox, I think, has a 3-barrel blend available that was still $50. So the value is still there. I'm still seeing stores get store picks for around the $50 mark, and I think it honestly is just as good as some of the Knob Creek picks, which are $20 to $30 more expensive. Some batches, I think, are comparable to Stag. Now, I did a blind with 1792 Full Proof, Stag, and Benchmark Full Proof. If you want to watch that, that's here. So these didn't quite stand up. But, I mean, Stag is a $65 bottle that you, unless you win a lottery or massively get lucky, you will not see it at $65. And these bottles, I think, are on a comparison level to that. Maybe not all the way up, but if you see Stag, it's $100 in stores. These are still readily available, and I think they're tasty. Blue Note Uncut has been a favorite of mine for a long time, and I think it drinks well above its $50 price point, and I think it's fantastic. So if you are looking for something and you come across that, I would definitely recommend you pick it up. I know quite a few people who have taken my recommendation and picked up their own and been pretty satisfied with it. If you're looking for a good value, Blue Note Uncut. And then finally, a couple of different ways I could have gone with my last bottle here. It is not a stranger to the channel. It is one that I talk about fairly frequently, but not as frequently as its little brother, Maker's Mark Cask Strength. And if you've used your powers of deduction, you'll probably figure out that I'm talking about Maker's 46 Cask Strength. It is $60. It is 110 proof. It's finished with virgin French oak staves. I think it gives you a comparable product to a lot of the ones that people are going crazy about. I know it doesn't have the age statement, but I think it's just as good as Calumet 16. And that's a $150, $160 bottle that people will gladly pay. I think it's one that people often overlook, especially because it's Maker's Mark, but it just has that premium experience. Like, it has a very distinct mouthfeel. It has a lot of great vanilla, oak, caramel flavors. It's hard to find a comparable bottle, but I think Calumet 16 is one that it could easily beat in a blind. I think even though it's $60, I think it's much more comparable to things that are in that 80 to 100, even 160 range when you're talking about Calumet 16 or Calumet 15 or Sam Houston 15. I just recently had Sam Houston 15, and I think this is better than that. I think it is a dark horse in a lot of blinds. It's one that, depending on batch and depending on maybe somewhat how you're feeling that day, it could very easily upset some very much more expensive bottles. So those are my 5 that are what I think are the best values in bourbon. That is always subject to change. You know, when you're talking value is obviously different to every single person, and some people don't care about value. If you're on a budget, you don't have a giant collection, these are 5 that I think that you can have, buy, and enjoy just as much as some of those rare and limited bottles that are much, much, much more expensive. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you have other bottles that you think are great values in whiskey, drop them below. We'll have a conversation. I always love talking whiskey, and I love interacting with the community here. You guys have been so gracious in watching my content, commenting, liking, and just supporting me all together. Please stay tuned. On the 29th of March, we are doing a live stream and a raffle with Sherry and Chris of Bourbon Besties. They will be on channel, and we will have a live raffle to support Alpha Bravo Canine. They're a not-for-profit who are working to provide service animals to United States military veterans, and I think it's a fantastic cause. We're also going to raffle off quite a few prizes, so stay tuned. If you are interested in coming, hanging out, talking whiskey, watching blinds, the description is up already. Click notify me, and then pay attention on the 29th. We're going to start at about 8 o'clock. Hope to see you there, and hope to be able to raise some money and raise some awareness for our nation's veterans and getting them service animals. If you like this content, check out our other videos. Please like and comment on this video. It helps us out a ton. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and we hope you'll join us in drinking like a gentleman. Cheers. So I think a lot of the legacy distilleries say that they can just put out whatever because they're competing with craft whiskey that most of it, taste-wise, should easily beat.